What is up, everybody? What a crazy time to be alive in good old March 2020. Boy, the world is falling apart. No, not really. I don't think so. But what a better time to get on your UTV or get in your garage and work on your UTV. So tonight, we're doing the 500 mile plus review on the KRX, and we're also gonna hit some major topics that I've seen on Facebook nonstop. I've pulled those up, comments, questions, all that kind of stuff. We're gonna discuss that as well. Let us know what you think in the comment section below and my opinion about all those as well. So we are gonna hit some of the top, I believe I got 8 topics or 7 topics that I'm gonna discuss tonight on the KRX that I feel like have been mentioned over and over and over and over again. And I bet some of you guys know what I'm getting ready to talk about. But I'm gonna share my opinion. Stay tuned. Here we go, Deranged Off-Road. So let's jump into this video. So I got my iPad here because I actually saved all of the comments as I searched through Facebook and wanted to come up with the most probably talked about issues with the KRX currently. And as I talk about each of the issues, what I wanted to do is give you my review on my machine and let you know if I experienced any of these. And also share with you my opinion about what I think about the problem and possibly what I think Kawasaki should do to fix it. So let's jump into this. So the number one issue that I feel like is talked about, maybe not necessarily talked about, but I feel like is the most important probably because it can cause the most issues, is the one-way bearing. So let me know below in the comments if you think that's the case, but I really think it's the biggest issue because if it does come up, it can cause some serious problems with the machine. First, we had the clutch issues where some of those bolts came loose. I haven't really heard much about that. I took my machine and I didn't have any issues with the bolts. But let's talk about one-way bearing. I have 610-ish miles on my machine. No issues with the one-way bearing. Never had an issue, never heard anything weird, never had it make a sound like some would say and then go away. Never had an issue. So let's jump into that. And I will share somebody's comment on here. I'm leaving names off. I'll post these comments up in the corner while I'm talking. But this comment reads, a little disappointed in the first time out in the new KRX. Love the overall performance of the machine, but it sounds like the wet clutch one-way bearing has already failed within 20 miles of driving this unit. Waited 2.5 months for back order items and pitched with the vehicle, and finally got tired of waiting for them to take it out, so I took it out and it breaks down on me the first time out. Come on, are you serious? So whoever, this guy's having some serious issues with his one-way bearing. I have to... Okay, there's so many comments and opinions about how you break in your machine. They're just opinions. Here's how I feel about that. When you break in your machine, just follow the manual. Kawasaki gave you a manual. It tells you what to do for the first, 120 miles, I believe, or whatever the manual says. I followed it to a T, and I'm running 600 miles without any issues. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but follow the manual. Why would you just drive it like you plan on driving it later? That doesn't make any sense to me. But anyways, so with the one-way bearing, basically, this guy is very disappointed because he had it for a very short time, 20 miles. Now, I can't say if he drove it the first 20 miles, like, pedal to the metal as fast as you can, wore the heck out of it, and then he caused an issue going up big hills, going backwards, and different things like that. I have no clue. So, another comment, it says, got my KRX January 25th, and now it is in the shop for the second time for the axle popping out. So we will get to the axle part later, but I want to talk about basically the one-way bearing. So he goes on to say, the first time it went in the shop was for the one-way bearing. Kawasaki customer service has been great. That is one thing so far I seem to have seen and read over and over and over again. The Kawasaki service has been wonderful, and people have been able to get things fixed. Sometimes takes a little bit longer than usual or longer than they wanted, and you never know if that's partly the dealer as well. Who knows? But overall, I've heard really positive things about Kawasaki. All right, so here's another comment. It says, so I'm having the problem that some of you have been experiencing, where I'm going downhill in two-wheel drive, the tranny just seems to let go and makes a grinding sound. Maybe some of you guys have had the same issue. It says, per Kawasaki, we pulled the CVT clutches and the one-way bearing / wet clutch housing. After looking and at the removed parts, nothing really looks damaged. Kawasaki thinks they got a bad batch of one-ways. I'm at a loss right now. The new parts are going in, and I guess I'll see what happens from this point forward. Basically, is what he's talking about. Is we'll see what happens. You know, getting a bad batch of bearings, I truly believe that, and I'll tell you why. There's been times that you can get a bad batch of breakers. You can get a bad batch of circuit boards. I know my dad's motorhome rental business, we would have some issues with quite a few different new motorhomes we'd buy around the same exact time when we'd go and pick up like maybe 4 or 5 or 6 at one time to rent. Like out of 4 or 5 or 6 of those, we would have like 3 or 4 bad control boards in the motorhomes, because when they get made together, they end up getting a bad batch. So I can believe that. Comment below if you think something different. A couple of the responses. Yep, I got the same thing going on. Already had it all replaced for a trip out. Did it again. I believe that only my thoughts that the internal issue is going on. It is to me more of a jumping out of gear in some way. Not the one-way bearing, but who knows at this point. Another one that says mine did the same thing, but only once. Did the same hill, same condition 2 weeks later without doing anything. The clutches, and it seems fine. First time, 50 miles, second time's 160 miles. So basically he went out and he had the weird noise happen and he figured it was a one-way bearing, but went out back again and didn't have the issue and hasn't had the issue since. Now he's put 50 miles on it, and then he even mentioned now he's over 160 miles. So who knows? And then the other people are just commenting basically, I don't get it, because I don't really get that either. This guy mentioned mine went out at 8 miles on it, but no problem since, the 160 miles on it now. So at 8 miles, his one-way bearing was out, and then he turned around and he had a new one put in, and then he's gone 160 plus miles, no issues. So let us know what you think in the comments below about the one-way bearing. I think it's a big issue. Do I think something in the setup of the Kawasaki's causing it? That's hard to say. I think there's a mixed couple things. I believe there could have been a bad batch of bearings causing a lot of their problems. But I also think it could be a little bit about people and the way they break in their units. Hard to say, but I'm willing to say it. All right, so after that, I want to touch on the next one. This is a big one that's starting to get talked about a lot, and it's been talked about for a while. The knuckles and the steering stops. So basically, what we're dealing with is the front knuckles are breaking. People having an issue, needing to get them replaced, all that kind of stuff. And then a lot of different comments about the steering stops. And I'm just gonna share my, my opinion on that. But as far as my machine goes, 0 issues with the knuckles, 0 issues with the steering stops. I can see where they are hitting, and I can see where it can cause the problem. And I am gonna give credit to one person on here in a second, because I think they've come up with the best solution to fix it for now. And I'm gonna mention that in a second. They just talk about basically, there's tons and tons of comments on here. It says, one thing that people have mentioned is grinding the steering stops off. I would say don't do that. Like, I don't think that's the way to go. And somebody is also saying the same thing. And it says, don't grind the steering stops down. The reason there are marks on them, it's because they're doing their job. Without them, the steering is going too far. The steering will go too far and the axle will bind. Check your car at home and see if they're hitting. Take it to a dealer and tell them what's going on. Grind the part of them off so that they don't hit. They will laugh at your door. Basically, they'll laugh you out of the door because you grounded them off and they're gone. And then you're expecting Kawasaki to cover it if something goes on. I'm telling you guys right now, the last thing you probably want to do is modifications on your knuckles necessarily. But at the same time, I think it's an issue that's come up enough that Kawasaki needs to probably come out with a fix and get them changed out somehow. So it is happening. The other thing that contributes to that is a lot of people are throwing 35-inch tires on these machines right away. I personally know of somebody that had a bunch of water in their tires. The tires were running 190 plus pounds each, and they broke their front knuckle, and they kind of wonder why. I mean, give me a break. So they hit something finally hard enough, they snapped it and had that issue, and Kawasaki still took care of them. So that's the amazing part, they still took care of them. But at the end of the day, I think it is a problem that needs to be fixed. There's some other people that are talking on it. It says, if you've grounded it off, I can imagine what the dealer at Kawasaki would say about fixing it when you show up with a breakage and want warranty coverage. I think he's kind of correct. So make sure you pay attention to what you're doing there. A lot of different people also commented about you could just enough to make it hit flat. Mine doesn't hit like the other hits higher. The casting must be off. So they're just looking at like wanting to grind it in a way so it just hits flat. I actually saw somebody put drill a hole through their A-arm and run a bolt in order to basically make it so it's flat, and then it's hitting the flat bolt head or whatever that they did. I can't remember. But in theory, that actually isn't necessarily a bad idea. But again, now you've drilled a hole in your A-arm, and then you got all that issues. So who knows if Kawasaki wants to cover it when you do have a major issue, and what they're going to warranty when you start messing with it like that. I don't know. The other thing is basically, let's be honest, many in this group build and sell accessories and parts for side-by-side, so they will highlight machines' weaknesses in order to sell. But this is really creating a general fear on the KRX, which is wrong. That's my opinion. I think that is a very good comment because, a lot of people that want to sell parts to fix these things, they can be amping up their parts by pointing out weaknesses. But it's very interesting to kind of just see what people are saying on Facebook all the time. And then you have all those other people that might not have so much experience around machines, but they're also typing in their opinions. I really think personally, when you're looking at problems, work with your dealer as much as you can, and hopefully you found a good enough dealer that you can work with that will listen to you and you can show the concerns. But I'm hoping Kawasaki steps up and figures that out. So with that being said, I need to share a tech tip, and this is from John Hester. So I don't know if you guys know John Hester. He is with Hester Motorsports out of New Mexico. He does tons of work on the KRX 4, KRX 2 800s, and now he's starting to build some KRXs. I've been in contact with him at different times through Messenger and all that kind of stuff. So he basically said what the issue is with the knuckles and how to fix them is not a defect in the knuckle, and why it is very rare occurrence. It has to happen under very specific situations. I do not want to point out the steering stop is only fractions of a millimeter away from the arms and still will help take a hard impact to the wheel and not damage the steering rack. And then he goes on, and what I will do is I will post the link of this one. So he did grind part of the knuckle stops off just a little bit, and the way he did it, it fits with the arms and it actually makes a lot better connection, and I think it can honestly fix a lot of your problems without like grinding the whole tab completely off and everything like that. I think he probably has one of the best solutions on social media right now, in my opinion. So I will post that link in the description below so you can look up that video and check it out on Facebook. Maybe you've already seen it, but he explains all of that. So check it out, Hester Motorsports, John Hester, and I'll post that link below. All right? If you have any other comments on that, leave them below and we can just talk more about them. So it's all about opinions, figuring out different experiences, and that's all we can do. So the next one. This one is interesting because I haven't found a whole lot of comments really on Facebook about it, but I want to know if people are hearing the same thing I am. So what I'm going to call it is a shock knock coming from the front of the vehicle. So my KRX has the issue. All the demo units that we test drove had the issue, and there's been other people that have talked about it and have heard the issue. So let's hear about your experiences with that. It's a weird sound coming from the front. I don't think it affects the KRX at all in the way that it performs, but it's a noise that drives me crazy, and it's mainly when you're hitting some harder stuff, going at a little bit higher speeds, and you start hearing that knock coming from the front. If you have an opinion on where it's coming from and you don't think it's from the shocks at all, or the mounts where the shocks go, then let us know in the comments below. I don't have many comments to mention on that, but it's driving me crazy and I'd like to figure it out. And I believe the KRX, I'm more than positive the one that Dave drove, the one that Joe drove, and the one that I drove for sure, all had the same exact sound, and they mentioned the same sound too. So let us know in the comments below what you think. I'm really curious to see if there's a fix for it, or if Kawasaki wants to step up and look at a fix for it, but I can't stand the noise. So anyways, enough on that. There's not a lot of comments on Facebook about it, but I wanted to bring it up because I thought it was a big deal in my book, because it really gets kind of loud, and it's just kind of annoying. I don't want to hear it because the car is performing fine. It's just been annoying. So anyways, comment below, tell me let me know what you think. All right, so let's move on to the next subject. This subject is starting to get talked about more and more and more. It's basically just about the spring sag and then losing ground clearance. So a lot of people said if they were to put the I want it all package on their machine, they are losing ground clearance just by the added weight. And then also, of course, riding it around. I have to say, I have lost probably about 1.5 inches to 1.75 inches of ground clearance since I've bought my machine. I've added quite a few different parts, but not everything. And then of course I've got a cargo box in the back, which I did a video on not too long ago. And I haven't really lost any more ground clearance with the spring sag, but I do see it starting to become a problem where I feel like when I first had it, the first maybe 30 to 50 miles, I was hitting things and not having issues. Now I'm starting to find myself bottoming out a little bit easier on the faster transition at sand dunes or whoops when you're going through it, even though I've changed the clicker settings on my shocks. But I also, am looking at taking it to somebody to get some adjustments done. But the question is it even worth it, because are the springs gonna hold up? And from everything I'm reading, I don't think so. And it would be nice to get a spring on there that would actually hold up from the factory. Now, if that's Kawasaki specs or if it's Fox shock specs, I don't know. Comment below again if you guys know the answer to that. But at the end of the day, I think it's an issue. I think it's something that Kawasaki should probably look at, because a lot of other machines are all known for it, and I was hoping with the extra weight of this KRX, it would not do that. And it seems to me like it is starting to do that a little bit. But like I said, I'll get some adjustments done. If I get those adjustments done, I'll do a video. I'll show you guys what that is and how it worked out and if it helped a lot. And if it holds, that's a question. After the adjustments, will it hold? I don't know. But the other thing is too, is you gotta be really, you're running that fine line of adjusting, getting ground clearance back, but are you losing a lot of your ride and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna be working with a company located here in Southern Utah soon. I'll have more on that later. But like I said, if you have any questions, any comments, just leave them below. This is what this video is all about. We want to get the comments flowing so we can start talking about it, and then hopefully Kawasaki's going to watch it, and then they're going to go through the comments, and hopefully we can see if we can get some answers to these different things. So the next thing, fit and finish on the KRX, and also the OEM aftermarket parts. So I do have a couple things that I want to bring up because I think they're legitimate. So somebody talked about in one of the comments, I want it all package, the trailing arm, skid plate, everything. They said overall it worked out pretty well, but they had some issues with the hardware. So the hardware was either breaking, or it was stripping out, or the screws were stripping out, and they just felt like it was cheap. Like I said, I'll post some of these comments so you guys can see them. But I have to say that that is relatively true. That was my only issue with a few of the things that I was putting on from the OEM aftermarket parts through Kawasaki. I felt their hardware, when I say hardware, I'm talking, just the nuts, the bolts, the screws, all that kind of stuff. They do strip out really easy if you're not careful, and I found myself having to buy 6 or 7 different new screws and stuff at the hardware store to replace the ones that stripped out really, really easy and didn't go in very well. And I think I just credit to just kind of cheaper metal, and I think they need to up that a little bit, and I think that would really help when you go in and install your your aftermarket parts. Also, the fit and finish, as far as the aftermarket parts, I've had people talk about their bumpers not necessarily looking good and put together right. That one is very difficult to me because the front bumper I bought was like spot on. It was perfect. I don't see really any issues with it. I bought like I have like a tow hook. I haven't seen any issues with that from Kawasaki. I've put on the mirror. I haven't had any issues with the mirror at all. I'm trying to think what else I bought. OEM. I've got, you know, the trailing arms, as far as like the trailing arms, the skid plate, all that kind of stuff. That to me has all seemed like good quality, except for the hardware part. That's where I think it's really lacking. But there is a lot of comments about the fit and finish of the OEM aftermarket parts. So let's hear your comments below. We want to hear them and let us know. Like I said, we have got to get talking about it so Kawasaki knows, otherwise they won't know. The fit and finish of the car itself, a couple of things that I have noticed that have been a little bit of an issue for me. I really wish that they had a better fit and finish on the doors. I feel like the top of the doors have a little bit of issues where you're getting some gaps, and I think that could have been solved easily with just a couple more plastic pop areas. Like adding 2 or 3 more would have fixed that. But I definitely think there's a little bit of an issue with the fit and finish on the doors. And there's something else that I want to bring up that I'm going to bring up a little bit later on my list, because this is just number 5 of importance that I think is also a problem. But overall, I haven't had too many other issues. I have noticed that my black hood and some of the white paint seems to scratch real easy, no matter if you use really high-end microfiber towels. So, which is pretty like the opposite of my KRX. So my KRX over here in orange, it like never scratches. The paint's great. It's done really, really well. And so I've been a little off on the paint on the KRX. So maybe talk about that a little bit. I haven't heard much discussion on that. So again, let's talk about that as well if you guys think the same thing. So fit and finish overall with the aftermarket parts, I've heard different things talked about it, but I don't think it's too big of an issue that I've seen. But if you have specific issues or pictures that you would like to post or whatever, then let's do it so we can see it. The next thing, number 6. I put this at number 6 because honestly, guys, I have a hard time thinking that it's really that big a deal. I hear a lot of people talk about it. Axles popping out. So my guess is from the factory, a human was not putting in the axle properly, making sure it's locked in. Of course, there might be some of you that have a different experience on why that's popping out, possibly, you know, that's fine. But most of the time it deals with that little tiny O-ring C-clip thing to make sure that's on there, and then also make sure that you push that axle all the way in. My KRX, 600 plus miles, I've had 0 axle issues. None of them have ever popped out. You know, maybe I'm just getting lucky on my KRX, but I think there's a lot of positive things going on with this KRX, and they get overshadowed by the negative stuff on Facebook. And it's interesting because I found somebody that actually did a poll on the different things, and I'm going to share that right at the end when I get done talking here. But I have had 0 issues with the axles. Honestly, if you want to take them to the dealer, great. If not, you can pop your stuff off real quick, pop that axle off, make sure that C-clip is expanded a little bit, pop the axle in fully, make sure it's locked in place, and you should be good to go. If you have an issue after that, then maybe you should take it to a dealer, maybe you have a different problem. But I really don't think the axles are a huge big deal, but they are talked about nonstop, and evidently people are having the issue. And I just received my Kawasaki letter to get them checked by the dealer a few days ago. So I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't think there's really an issue with it, so that's pointless. But I did receive the letter. So if you guys feel otherwise, let me know. But it's just an axle, and I think it's pretty easy to pop it back in and hit the trail again. But if it's coming out multiple times, you might have a different problem. Okay, number 7. I put this as number 7 because I don't think it's nearly as big of a deal as the rest of the things, but it kind of goes along with the fit and finish. It's the seat sliders. So basically the sliders on the seats of the KRX, honestly, in my opinion, I give them like a 3 out of a 10. Like, they do their purpose to hold you in place, but they do not slide very well. They don't move around very well. They don't seem very tight. The seat doesn't seem tight. And I would just like a better design somehow to really, like, I don't know. I just like to see it fixed. And I know a lot of people have talked about the seats. There was somebody that brought up some comments about basically their harnesses, and when they're in them, it's really not like a harness issue. I would say that it's more of like the seat itself. If there's some people that saying it has some movement from 1 to like 3 inches, or it's moving around on them, not staying locked in. I haven't had issues with mine not staying locked in. I just have had more issues of it just moving back and forth freely or easier. And then after you're locking in, I just feel like there's a little bit of movement when it's locked in still, and the seat's not fully secure. But I mean, it's not like a huge deal. That's why I put it on number 7, but it is getting talked about more and more on Facebook. I like somebody's comment here. It says, this may be a stupid question. Does anybody keep sliding forward in the seat? I installed the 4-point harness and now I really notice it. Is it the seat that needs to lean back, not straight up or down? I'm 6'2", if that matters, some thoughts. And then the comments that came out basically is, yep, set hardware in the KRX is also junk. Something else, I run the KRX belts, no issues at all with movement, just a little bit of tiny movement, but not at sliding. The seat stays locked in, but I don't care for the sliders at all. So there's definitely comments, there's definitely things getting talked about. I would like to see a solution if Kawasaki doesn't come up with one to make those seat sliders a little bit better, which I think they should actually. I hope somebody else out there is thinking of something to do for those, because I'd be on board getting them. And I think a lot of other people would be too. So let's move on to number 8. And this is my last topic I'm gonna talk about because I think everything else, I just heard so 1s and 2s about it. I'm not really too concerned about people's motors going out and mufflers having issues and glowing and different things, because I think it's so rare that it's not really something that, obviously they just had an issue with their machine and it needs to get fixed. I don't doubt that, but at the same time, I don't think it's coming up enough to really talk about. So number 8, this one's talked about a lot. The gas gauge, of course. I put it number 8 because it's not that big of a deal. It's just annoying not to have a gas gauge that works. But what's interesting is some of the comments that came in with that, where everybody's talking about the gas gauge. And the biggest thing is, and I can relate, I got the same issue on mine. You sit there and you drive most of the day and you're down to like 2 bars. You go to the gas station, you fill it up, it takes like 4 gallons, 5 gallons. So it's barely used like half of what you're looking at. From what I've been reading on here though, it sounds like most people are getting anywhere from 100 to 140 miles on a tank. I think I went about 83 to 90 miles the other day, and I ended up having to put 7-ish gallons in it. So with that being said, I think it would have easily gone like 110, 125 miles. So I don't think it's doing too bad as far as gas mileage goes, but the gas gauge, you like never know where you're at. So I've been tempted. I run a Rotopack now, so I've been tempted just to run it until it finally dies and then just see where I'm at on miles. But then that changes. If you're running mainly sand dunes or desert and you're running high speeds versus mountain at low speeds, you're gonna get a little bit different mileage, but it'd be nice to kind of get an idea. What was interesting though that I'm gonna put is that somebody put in a question about this to Kawasaki, and they actually answered, and they also answered with a picture of the fuel tank. So I will put that up here so you guys can see it, but it says, actually, it's probably not an issue with the gauge. If you look at the photo below, you will see there is a bit of a hump in the fuel tank. This is from Kawasaki. This is an answer from Kawasaki with the picture. If you are on level ground without any turns, you will end up with the fuel still available on the left side of the tank. All you'll need to do is take a hard left to see if the fuel gauge increases when the fuel moves to the right side. Please let me know if you have any further questions. Thank you. So what followed after that is basically like, great. That'd be cool if we ran in NASCAR, or basically which way you want to go. Left. Okay, which way now? Left. Which way now? Left. That way we can make sure we fill up the other side of the gas tank with gas. I think I commented on that one at some time, if I remember right. I was like, yeah, I can't wait for my buddies to sit there and saying, what the freak is that guy doing? Keep on like jarring the car to the left all the time. Well, I'm trying to get my gas gauge read so I know how much gas I got in the tank. So anyways, evidently at the end of the day, the gas tank was a little bit of a design flaw issue is basically what the problem is. I don't know if they're gonna fix that or worry about it. I'm not gonna worry about it too much. I would love the gas gauge to be off, but I think I've heard of a lot of people with UTVs in general and their gas gauges are off in a lot of different type of machines. I know that KRX 800, my gas gauge has been pretty much right on. And if I remember correctly, Dave and his Defender, the gas gauge has been right on. But I think his gas gauge is off as well, he said, in his new XRC. So I'm not sure where Joe stands on his Talon, but I thought he was saying that his gas gauge seemed right on. But then again, I think that thing only carries like 1.5 gallons of gas. So just kidding, Joe. So anyways, it's an issue. I don't think it's a big issue. The other thing is too, is a few of the comments have also been talking about the gas tank getting really warm and hot, evaporating a lot. That could be a problem. All I know is on the KRX 800, after I pulled my gas tank, I actually went on a pretty long ride and had my gas almost like boiling. So when I released the lid, a lot of fumes came out. We were smelling a lot of fumes in the cab as well. And somebody's comment was basically the same thing with the KRX. I can see it happening, I guess. But what I did is I lined my gas tank with aluminum tape on the one side to reflect heat. And honestly, I haven't had the problem since. Plus, if you want to run your gas line, your line that basically just, you know, gets rid of all the fumes, the evap line or whatever, you can relocate that, I'm sure, out the KRX somewhere to help get it out of your, you know, out of your cab or whatever, so you don't have to smell it. But I haven't done that on the KRX. Actually, all I did was line that side of the gas tank that's close to the motor that gets real hot, and I haven't had an issue. So I'm thinking with the KRX, if worse comes to worse, I guess you could line it where all those hot coolant lines run right through the center. That creates quite a bit of heat that might be also heating up the gas. So far with all my rides running 65 degrees, 70 degrees or less, I haven't had any issues. So, okay, so those are my basically top 8s. If I'm missing something, let me know. I probably am. There's always a lot of information in these videos. So please let me know if I'm off or you don't agree with my opinion. That's fine too. Comment below. And we'd like to know. Overall though, with my KRX, I am very, very pleased. I love the way it handles. I love the way it drives and how comfortable it is. I love how it can go out basically, you know, all day and keep on riding and not be worn out. That was my biggest thing with my KRX, and I've got it here still when I go out, but by the end of the day, if I'm putting quite a few miles on, it's like, it's time to go home. But the KRX, I feel like it's been really comfortable. I love the size of the cab. I've heard different things about people feeling like the cab's too squished. I don't even know how you come to that conclusion unless you honestly own like a Razor and you just can't get over the fact that the KRX is way more comfortable inside the cab. And you can't admit it because the cab is way bigger than the freaking Razor. I've had a Razor and by no means that thing was as comfortable as this KRX when you sit inside. So that's been a big plus. I love the suspension overall, except for that little shock knock. I love the way it rides. It's just so comfortable. Suspension's really easy. I've had zero problems, like I said, with it. I did post something about I bent a rim, front rim. So I did have that problem. I don't know how I did it. Never felt it, but I bent it. Must have hit something in the sand or rock or something. So there's that. So I'm working on getting that fixed. I'm trying to think anything else I've had issues with. Cab heat, like I said, it's been hard for me to know. I haven't had any issues with cab heat for me. Our windows that we sell, the Dirt Warrior windows with the flip up vents, they work great. And I've gotten plenty of air, but I've only been riding in 70-degree weather or less. And we haven't really had a chance to get into the summer months, which is coming up real soon. So we'll see when that time comes. I'm trying to think of anything else that I can tell you about it. Everything else has been working out pretty well. I've got all my accessories on, Rhino lights, check them out on our website. They're awesome. And I use the bus bar for pretty much everything. I haven't had any issues with that. We're getting ready to install some comm system into our machines. And by the time it's done, the Honda Talon, the XRC, and the KRX will all be running the same comm system. So we look forward to that. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else. So the last thing I did want to share though was this poll that somebody did on Facebook. And I thought it was pretty cool because I also thought it explained quite a bit of stuff here. So somebody did a poll. He said, well, since it's a hot topic now, Have you had any issues with your KRX? I would imagine most people have had 0. So he goes on, and these are the questions that you could have voted on. The first one is no issues. Yes, axle's coming out. Kind of stupid, gas gauge. Yes, one-way bearing failure. Yes, clutch bolts recall, or other or multiple issues. So it looks like he probably had maybe 100, let's go with 150 people, somewhere around there, vote total, because there was 3 people that voted on multiple issues, 3 people voted on other issues, 3 people voted on clutch bolt recalls, and of course these numbers aren't dead on, but at least people voted here. So 3 people plus 5, so 5 people total voted on the one-way bearing failure. The gas gauge, 17, so 20 people voted on the gas gauge. I think if everybody would actually vote on that, you would see a huge number, because everybody's, I think, gas gauge is generally off. Let's see, axles coming out. It looks like 30 people have had the issues of axles coming out. So quite a bit there. And then the big one, no issues, 69, let's see, 68 people. 68 people voted no issues. So at the end of the day, that poll is kind of telling that regardless of all the problems that might be out there, for a first year machine from Kawasaki, remember first year, yes, they did a lot of testing, but your testing will never cover the general population buying the machine and putting it through who knows what. But out of all those people in the poll, no issues, basically 68 people voted no issues. So I think that kind of is a good sign for Kawasaki. I think overall, I know when you buy an expensive machine, it's hard to have it, and it's hard to sit there and be like, man, that's just like a lot of money to spend. It's in the shop, all that kind of stuff. I get you, I feel you, I've been there in different situations. But at the end of the day, I think these machines are performing pretty well for a first year machine, and they're only gonna get better. And when I bought this machine, I knew what I was buying. I knew I was buying the first year machine, and I knew that there might be some issues that come with buying a first year machine, and that's all right. So at the end of the day, I couldn't be more happy with the KRX. We got a lot of other content coming up. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure you comment below on all this video and let us know what you think. But at the end of the day, Dave, Joe, and I are having a blast bringing this content to you, and we look forward to bringing a whole lot more. This is Garrett with Deranged Off-Road, and we'll catch you on the next one. And remember, Deranged Off-Road, and we'll catch you on the next one. But remember, whatever you pack in, pack it. Deranged Off-Road. Till next time, make sure you, all right, guys, so that's it. This is Garrett with Deranged Off-Road. Make sure whatever you pack in, you pack out. And until next time, Garrett, Dave, and myself, forget it, man. I'm done with the ending. Till next time, we'll see you next time. Garrett with Deranged Off-Road. Peace.